Welcome, everyone. We're going to wait just a second, let everybody get in. But while we're doing that, I will go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Dr. Amy Moore. I am a professor and assistant dean for global health in the School of Nursing at Texas Tech University Health Sciences Center. I co-chair, along with Teresa McKay, the Academic Partnership Initiative, or APPI for CUGH. It's just easier to say this. All of our panelists today serve on the APPI committee, and in our early conversations in our committee, we felt that there was a real need for an opportunity to provide information regarding different topics related to mentoring, such as research, writing, challenges in teaching, and so on. So we felt like the first thing that we should cover is the best practices for being a mentor or a mentee. The APPI committee does match mentors with mentees, and that application is now open. So we're really excited about that. And we would like to encourage you to sign up as either a mentor or a mentee. We all probably can mentor in one area, but would love to be menteed in another area. So we will start with, I'm going to introduce our speakers for today, and we'll start with Dr. Anna Sofia, Professor of Psychiatry and Global Health Program Coordinator at the School of Medicine at Pontificio Catholic University of Rio Grande do Sul in Brazil. Our second panelist is Elizabeth Rose. Dr. Rose is an assistant professor at the Vanderbilt Institute for Global Health and director of the Global Health Track in the Master of Public Health program. Our third panelist will be Dr. Joseph Becker. He is an associate professor in the Department of Emergency Medicine at Stanford University School of Medicine. He is also the head of Department for Emergency Medicine at the University for Global Health Equity in Rwanda and is adjunct faculty at the University of Rwanda. Our final panelist will be Purba Chatterjee, Associate Director for Global Health Equity, the University of California at San Francisco in the Department of OB-GYN at Bixby Center. And we would love to know who you are and where you are from. So please feel free to put your name and where you're from, just your location in the chat. And then during our presentation, if you have questions, please put your questions in the Q&A. So we will go ahead and begin. Our first objectives for this program, and I'm going to get you to go to the first slide. I'm not going to read them, but really what we want to do is we want to describe and talk about the characteristics of being a mentor and mentee. We'll address the challenges in these programs. We're going to give you some resources for mentoring, which is they're fantastic resources. And then we want you to have an understanding of what this mentorship program is. So we will start with our first speaker.
Thank you so much, Amy, for the introduction of our work. It's an honor to be here today, and I am excited to be able to be part of this committee. I already feel like I'm in a network, a cloud of mentors and mentees that provides me with a circle of support. So let's start with a quick reflection. What comes to mind when you think of mentorship? Please take a moment and type a few words or phrases, if you prefer, in the chat. And remember, there are no wrong answers, just your own perspective, maybe based on a mentorship experience you might have had. I see words like guidance, mutual relationship, development, support, facilitator, guidance and support, coordinate students, teaching and learning, that's great, empowerment, that's a good one, advisor, apprenticeship, accountability. Maybe a few more ideas will come to you as we go along. Feel free to jump into the chat at any point. Thank you so much. It's great to see those words. So let's keep those ideas in mind as we explore what mentorship actually looks like in practice. Next slide, please. Here's one way to think about mentorship. It's a professional relationship, an alliance where the mentor helps guide the mentee in personal and professional development. And I would like to highlight this in the re examination of his or her own ideas, learning through ongoing support, conversations, and encouragement. Next, please. And mentoring can show up in many different ways. On the career side, mentors may act as sponsors, opening doors to opportunities that might otherwise remain closed. They coach by teaching and giving feedback, advice, tutor, and sometimes act as a buffer, protecting their mentees in challenging environments. They also challenge them, encouraging new ways of thinking and pushing them to stretch their skills. And importantly, they provide visibility, steering mentees toward assignments or opportunities that help them get recognized in their field. But mentoring isn't all about career advancement. On the personal side, it's also about being a role model, demonstrating the behaviors, attitudes, and values that lead to success. It's about counseling, helping mentees navigate tough dilemmas. And maybe most importantly, it's about acceptance and affirmation. Simple letting someone know they are seen and supported. Next, please. I know you are at this webinar because you already believe mentoring matters, and I do want to show you a few of the many studies that highlight just how powerful mentorship can be. Strong mentorship has been consistently linked to greater productivity, confidence in one's own abilities, and higher career satisfaction. It also predicts success for researchers in training, and according to Shi, Steiner, Gloria, and Robinson, mentored individuals tend to publish more, get more grants, and persist through academic challenges. Mentorship is especially critical in helping students make decisions that lead to academic persistence, and it's been cited as one of the most important factors in actually completing a degree. And when we look at students for underrepresented groups, the benefits are even more pronounced. Positive mentoring increases exposure, boosts retention, and significantly predicts high research productivity. The challenge, though, is that underrepresented individuals often receive less mentoring than their peers. Even those already in academic spaces report inadequate guidance, lack of institutional understanding, and minimal support, things that can be all addressed with stronger, more equitable mentorship practices. And this reality with students is pretty much the same with professionals from the global south. Next, please. As a dynamic reciprocal relationship, mentorship is also powerful in transforming systems. In global health, adopting a decolonial approach to mentorship means fostering equitable partnerships, and the Global South face unique global health mentorship challenges like limited resources, inadequate institutional support, limited networks, language and cultural differences that are notable and can establish impactful mentorship disconnections. Financial constraints may hinder their ability to travel to conferences and to engage in research activities. And how to address those challenges? Being reflective, establishing clear guidelines and codes of conduct that emphasize mutual respect, cultural sensitivity, and the promotion of equitable opportunities. fostering a platform for cross-cultural education and learning across geographical boundaries. Building virtual communities like this, maintaining a strong adherence to ethical principles, and changing the idea of capacity building relationship to a capacity strengthening one. And finally, mentorship programs should be co-designed with input from all actors, specific needs and aspirations. Thank you, and I will ask Elizabeth to continue the presentation.
Thank you, Anna. That was a fabulous overview of mentorship. And I'm going to take that and dive into what does it mean to be an effective mentor and an effective mentee. I've seen a few people in the chat who are trainees and students, but we can all be mentees in different ways. So I want you to take a moment to think about being in a mentoring relationship. Maybe it's one that you've been in before, one that you've observed, or one that you imagine being in. What was the experience like? Did you know what to expect, how to engage in the partnership, your role and responsibilities? And if so, how did you know? And I think a lot of times when we enter into these mentoring relationships, we don't always have a clear path forward. We don't always have all these expectations written out in the beginning. So we'll talk a little bit about what should some of those expectations be and how we can really enter into into a successful mentorship relationship. So successful mentoring relationships, Stratus and colleagues surveyed over 50 faculty at a few universities about their experiences mentoring trainees. And they found 5 themes among that. The first was reciprocity, and understanding that mentoring is collaborative. Mentees are not just a passive recipient of a mentor's guidance, but ideally mentees and mentors engage as partners through reciprocal activities such as planning, acting, reflecting, questioning, and problem solving. And this is a dynamic relationship that can change over time. Now, sometimes we might think that mentors continually give and it's the mentee that benefits, but the mentors can benefit as well. And anyone who's been a mentor before can hopefully agree that being a mentor helps you to expand your network with adding your mentee. It also helps you to be exposed to new ideas and perspectives through your mentee. And you could potentially have your mentee help and collaborate on a manuscript or project. Now, it's also very important that successful mentoring relationships are mutually respectful, respectful of each other's time, effort, and qualifications. Mentorship should work towards a common goal, and it's important to respect the place that each person is in their career. And in respecting each other's time, it's important to be mindful of agreed upon ways and times for communication and not to overstep some of those boundaries. Clear expectations also goes with not overstepping some boundaries. It's so helpful to set these up, to set up guidelines in the beginning. Many times when mentorship starts, both parties might assume the other person has the same perspective on how often we should meet, how long should that meeting be, who should plan the meetings. But it's important to clarify and set those parameters at the beginning of the relationship. I remember years ago, we had a scholar that came to Vanderbilt to study on a Fulbright, and we set him up with a mentorship committee. And immediately he went and emailed them and said, "Hey, looking forward to having weekly meetings." That was his perspective of mentoring. His mentors were certainly expecting something different, something more along the lines of monthly meetings. So it's important to make sure that you discuss those expectations at the beginning. Other expectations that you might discuss, especially if you are diving into the CUGH Mentorship Program, which we hope everyone does. But how will you meet? Will it be video calls? Will it be phone calls, WhatsApp calls? And the type of communication between meetings. Should you be texting each other, emailing? Is there a time of day that's better or that you should avoid? And then discussing responsibilities about who's scheduling meetings, setting the agenda, and the like. It's also important in mentorship relationships to have shared values. And hopefully within this program, we share some of those, but really looking towards others and will help in some of that pairing to find people who have some of the same goals in mentorship. And then personal connection is important. This is more than just, as I mentioned in the beginning, a passive relationship. And so it's important to invest plenty of time, especially in those first few meetings, in building that personal connection. Knowing a bit about each other can help build trust. And as a mentor, it can really help provide some good insight to guide your mentee. So unsuccessful mentoring relationships, the same study, they found 5 things common unsuccessful relationships. The first was poor communication. Um, Effective communication should be regular. Both parties should actively listen to each other. Um, Mentees should act on the advice of their mentors. Mentors can feel very frustrated when their advice is not followed. And I guide my mentees and my students to say, a good way to follow up. If a mentor recommends that you read a paper, watch a video, connect with someone, do that and then follow up with the mentor to let them know how it was. Yes, this paper aligned really great. It was, lots of great insights. Or meeting with that person, it was great, but not really along the lines of my goals. Even giving constructive feedback, if you will, to the mentor about resources that didn't work well can help that mentor advise better in the future. Mentees should also communicate why they want mentoring and their goals for being mentored. Do they want to grow certain skills? Do they want guidance in career path, connections, those types of things? And they should be honest about challenges so that the mentor can provide appropriate guidance for that. And then with proper communication, mentors should really be approachable and available and really trying to listen more than always instruct. Different expectations can be a challenge in unsuccessful mentoring relationships. So as I mentioned earlier, saying clear expectations is so important. It came up in the successes and the unsuccesses or challenges. So can't underscore the importance of setting expectations. Another challenge, lack of time and commitment. So as you're setting expectations, certainly be aware of each other's time. And before entering into a mentoring relationship, be honest about your availability to commit and your interest in that. Personality differences. And so there are 2 examples on this slide of ways that mentors and mentees might jive a little bit, and you need to be aware of the other's personality. So if someone is very extroverted and really wants to talk all the time, and you have someone who's very introverted and very quiet, one person, of course, needs to remember to make space for the other person to talk. And especially there are people who think as they're talking, and there are people who need to think before they talk. So be aware of how your mentee or your mentor are processing information so that you can really make space for them to have time to process and think and to contribute. And then finally, perceived or real competition. Mentors may feel some competition or from their mentee or worry that their mentee will take over. It's important to remember as mentors, we can't continue our work forever. Someone will have to hopefully carry on our work. We don't want it to die when we retire or move on. And so mentoring and really building up strong trainees and colleagues, it can be very helpful. And then if you're working together on projects, papers, that type of thing, it's helpful in the beginning to, of course, talk through intellectual ownership and things like that. Okay, so responsibility in the mentoring meeting. This is part of setting those expectations at the beginning. And I have a table here that shows a variety of different things and who generally should be in charge of that. So determining the frequency and setting of regular meetings, that should be mutually agreed upon between the mentor and the mentee. Now, sending the meeting agenda, that should be on the mentee. And we recommend that mentees that you send the agenda a couple days prior to the meeting. This can serve as a reminder for the mentor that the meeting's coming up, and also provide them the list of topics that you want to talk about so that they can start thinking about it and maybe even getting the resources together. And we say that the mentee sets the meeting agenda because the relationship should really be guided by the mentee. It's about the goals that the mentee has and what they want to get out of the experience. The mentor shouldn't be trying to just create a mini me of them, but really be flexible to the mentee and what they want. The mentee and mentor should, of course, come prepared to the meeting. The mentee prior to the meeting should formulate their goals. What do they want to achieve in that meeting, and what do they want to achieve maybe for the next 6 months, year, 5 years in their career? The mentor should offer probing questions, guidance, and resource. So a lot of the meeting should be, the mentee talking and the mentor asking questions, really trying to get that mentee to think differently, to have different perspectives, and in some ways have their perspective being challenged so that they can consider all the options that are out there and in the end find the best one for themselves. At the end of a meeting, it can be helpful for the mentee to email a summary of the notes and next steps, and then of course to follow up on those next steps. Okay, so as you think about your mentoring meetings, GROW is a framework that can be very helpful for these conversations. It starts with G, goal. What does the mentee want to achieve? And that might be initially when you start mentoring, the mentee should share their goals for mentoring and for career growth. Excuse me. And we say use SMART goals, which includes being specific. That can help the mentor guide the mentee. But also to be realistic. And a lot of times that's the mentor's job to help the mentee realize what might be attainable and realistic in a certain time frame. And as I mentioned, the mentor should be ready to ask questions to help guide that mentee through thinking about their career vision or the skills and knowledge they need to reach the next level. The next is R, reality. Where is the mentor currently? What's their reality? Is it they want to get to a certain goal? Is there a skills gap that they're missing? Is there a challenging situation at work that they're working through? The mentor should provide encouragement as well as constructive feedback and ask those probing questions to learn more and to help the mentee understand the root issues and stumbling blocks. O stands for obstacles or options. And the mentor can provide, as I mentioned, a broader perspective, different perspectives, and really encourage the mentee to think critically and strategically through situations. The mentor should share information on opportunities such as training, fellowships, papers, videos, conferences, people to connect with, and really encourage the mentee to engage with other professionals and researchers. And finally, W is way forward. The mentee should decide after listening and talking with their mentor and thinking through different scenarios. The mentee in the end decides on the next steps and a timeline to move closer to their goal. And finally, I'll mention briefly peer mentorship. So we will strive to pair people, mentors and mentees together. But sometimes when you get a pairing, and this has happened to me before my institution, we got into it and we realized we were really peer mentors. And this can be really helpful. If you end up being in a peer mentoring relationship, focus on reciprocal learning, and know that some of the benefits of that is you're with a person who may have recently navigated similar experiences, so you can walk through those together. And with that, I'm going to pass it on to my colleague Joe, who's going to talk about case studies and help us work through mentoring challenges.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Good morning or good afternoon or good evening, everybody. My name is Joe Becker. I'm really excited to be here today. I certainly agree with Anna and Elizabeth that I've benefited a lot from mentorship, and actually as a mentee as well as a mentor, I've really enjoyed these relationships. And I'm going to talk a lot about case studies right now. And what I did essentially was I kind of sent out a couple of emails and WhatsApp messages to my network of both kind of trainees, students, and residents who I work with, as well as colleagues who have mentored. And I also kind of reflected on my own experiences, both as a mentee and mentor, to kind of come up with these cases. And so these cases are real. They're based on responses from my colleagues, and actually one of them is one of my cases or one, my situation. But these are all real cases that folks have emailed or messaged me in the last few days. Next slide, please. All right, so we're gonna, whoops, sorry, one back if it's okay. So we're gonna, like I said, these are real cases. We're gonna kind of talk about the common pitfalls that you guys have kind of seen referred to in the prior couple of slides and presentations. We're also going to talk about mentorship trajectories. Some are typical, some are a little more atypical. We're going to talk about that very important component and step in the mentorship relationship of defining success, of delineating the goals of the relationship. We're going to talk about potential failure points or expectation mismatch. And then we're finally going to conclude on what really has worked, especially in these cases and overall. And through this, I want you to consider these mentor-mentee competencies that we've kind of talked about so far in this presentation. But these are the kind of really kind of core pillars of a strong mentor-mentee relationship that are kind of recipes for success. And they're kind of stitched through these cases that we're about to discuss. Okay, next slide. All right, so this first presentation was actually sent to me by a former resident of mine and now a colleague who has graduated and since gone on to do great things. And so she kind of related to me her situation, which is from a few years ago. She was a graduate student at that point. She's very interested in global health. And she was paired with a very senior faculty member from the US. And so they had a very productive relationship. And my colleague describes that, the mentor had given her great advice regarding strategic calls in terms of her career development and courses, including graduate courses to take and publications. And it also provided her with multiple opportunities in terms of speaking opportunities and publication opportunities. But she kind of approached her mentor with a challenge that she had, as she felt that, as a female, she had not been heard adequately by a lot of her male colleagues. And in her department, she was one of the only, and I think at that time, actually, she was the only female physician or leader, developing leader in the department. And she felt that she really wasn't being heard and that this was resulting in her not being offered the same academic opportunities that her male counterparts were. So she came to her mentor with this challenge, with this question, and her mentor, she told me, kind of came back with a very firm and very kind of sure and very definitive response that she should challenge this in a very open and overt manner. She should take this directly to her program director as well as the clinical director of the department, and then also confront her colleagues directly about their behavior and about the situation. All right, next slide. I think we can all kind of appreciate that situation, and it's certainly a challenging one. But is that sage advice? And I think it could be, it really could be. It certainly sounds reasonable, but I think we all know that also it really does depend. So there's a lot of kind of context here that's really, really important. There's, of course, a social, a professional, a cultural context, and this is all critical. And addressing problems like this really takes a subtlety and sometimes a nuance as well as a real being informed of the context that is important. And it's really, I think, critical, especially when you're providing mentorship in a global health setting or particularly with international colleagues, to kind of recognize that we might not always have that adequate context. We might not always fully understand the context that our mentor or our mentee is operating within. And as a result, I think it's really important to really know your limitations and to seek out either advice or some background or perhaps even education. So in this case, I think would have been maybe potentially a better approach would have been to kind of examine the fit? Was my colleague's mentor the appropriate mentor, at least for this particular question? It sounds like their mentorship relationship had been great and very productive. It sounds like there had been a lot of opportunities and a lot of professional development going on. But for this particular question, perhaps the mentor wasn't the best fit for addressing this question. So, as a mentor in that situation, that might be a situation in which you might seek out a co-mentor or perhaps a consultant, someone who does have some of that background or some of that context that might provide a more informed or a contextualized response or advice to this particular situation. A lot of mentees have multiple mentors. In fact, I think that might be the rule more than the exception, whether these mentors are formal or informal or part of formal programs or just mentors that have been kind of identified by the mentee. That varies, but I think a lot of mentees have multiple mentors that kind of operate separately. What I think is a potentially very powerful situation is when those mentors operate in a team fashion, where they kind of team up and they provide uh, consensus or they provide informed, contextualized, and diverse responses to difficult challenges like this one that was brought up by my colleague. So that was our first case. And I think it was a really good one. And I think it was very kind of emblematic of a lot of challenges in the mentor-mentee relationships. All right. So our next scenario is a situation in which a resident in emergency medicine, my particular field, has had some difficulty identifying a capstone research project to meet their graduation requirements. Most clinical training programs have some requirement like this, where there's a requirement for a trainee to identify some research question and take it through all the steps of the research process, developing the question, developing the protocol, going to the institutional review board, collecting data, and eventually publishing a response. This is a requirement of most programs. But many trainees end up having difficulty identifying a question and thus kind of taking care of this requirement. And in this particular situation, the resident's mentor, and most programs have assigned mentors as well to trainees, who has themselves a very active research part of their career, decided, hey, why don't I bring this resident on to some of my research projects? And this would be a win-win. I would have someone who would assist in my research being performed and my research projects being completed. And of course, this would provide an opportunity for this trainee to take care of this capstone requirement that they have. And so this looked like a win-win at the time to both of the participants. However, after a few months on the project, the resident realized that they weren't really getting anything out of this relationship. They were getting very minimum experience and knowledge in research methods and actually conducting a study. They weren't really making a study design, and they weren't really submitting any of the requirements that they had for their capstone project. They found that most of their time was spent just enrolling patients and performing data entry, which of course were fairly, simple tasks that were not going to take care of the requirement, nor were they going to contribute much in the way of education or training for this particular trainee. Next slide. So I think this is a situation that we can all see that can develop very easily. Both parties approach this with kind of best interests of the other party in mind, and it does seem like a win-win initially. But it certainly also seems that in the end, there weren't a lot of benefits in this particular relationship for the mentee. So how could the mentee approach the situation differently to assure that they're getting what they need out of this particular interaction? Well, I mean, I think this is a really important illustration of the importance of both communication as well as setting those expectations and defining success. So very early on, I think the mentee should have said, hey, this relationship is great, and thank you for your assistance. What really I need out of this is the following. In other words, the complete my requirement, and even more important than that, to gain some experience in developing a research question and taking a research project through to its completion. And so I think that mentee communicating that very early on and potentially even developing a roadmap or a plan for how they would accomplish those goals with the assistance of the mentor would be critical. And then ongoing communication to say, hey, look, as we go through this project, as this relationship develops, as my participation on this research protocol continues, am I really getting out of this what I need, such that months don't go by until it's realized that, hey, this is really not producing the outcomes that I had expected. All right. And in this case, I think the responsibility of the mentor is very important as well, because mentors really have to kind of be on guard for this. There's many times a power differential in terms of the power that is held by the mentor and that held by the mentee. Many times mentors are in charge of kind of opening doors and providing opportunities for their mentees. And there's a power differential that is inherent in that. And so mentors really should be on guard for really that their mentees are getting everything out of the relationship that they need, and that their goals and that their holistic health in terms of their process through the mentor-mentee relationship is being addressed. Excellent. All right. Great. So next slide, please. All right. So this was a case brought to me by a colleague, and it's the case of another clinician, a trainee who had some interest in global health research in specific, who was assigned an international mentor with expertise in this field. And actually, this mentor is very well known and very well regarded, director of a World Health Organization collaborating center. But after several years of solid ongoing communication and in-person mentorship, the mentee had gotten a lot done, had completed her medical training, had obtained a master's in public health, and had established multiple relationships with other groups doing research, and actually had spoken quite a bit and seemed to be having, very successful career development, particularly with regard to the assistance the mentor was giving. However, at some point, things started to kind of go sideways. The mentee had submitted several recent papers for publication, which had been rejected, even from kind of moderate impact journals that they had expected would accept their manuscripts. A large grant submission, which they had spent really months on, refining and polishing with high expectations for success, was not funded and really not even refereed. And as a result, the mentee was feeling very, very discouraged and had started to kind of really reconsider their continued participation in academic medicine. All right, next slide. So this is really, I think, a very common hurdle, a very common development in a lot of careers. We all encounter failure, we all encounter challenges, and that's to be expected. And I think that's going to be a very typical and very standard subject of any mentorship relationship, is how to kind of handle those bumps in the road, how to handle failure. But I think it's also very challenging because how does, what do you do when failure really becomes demoralization or career burnout, or even kind of has a mentee refocusing or reconsidering their career choices? So I think it's really important in this situation to consider the role of the mentor, because mentors can really, really be critical in essentially retrieving or even saving the career path of a mentee, such as the one in this case. So, the things like providing encouragement, providing alternative opportunities that could help a mentee kind of get some easy or quick successes, to kind of provide them with stepping stones to larger or more meaningful successes, are things that are very important that a mentor could provide. The mentor could also obtain collaboration, bring in co-mentors like we were discussing in the first case, to assist the mentee to further develop and further kind of maybe develop a toolbox or develop more of a skill set that will help them obtain success and address some of the issues that they had with some of their prior failures. Another, really, I think, important issue here is really focusing on defining success again, is what does the mentee really want? Some of these failures may have been important, but I think a lot of mentees, particularly early in their career, also tend to apply for everything, tend to write everything, tend to take every opportunity that comes up. And as a result, when some of those don't come through, or some of those don't develop, or there are failures or grants are not accepted, it can be very discouraging. So really helping the mentee focus on what their definition of success is and what are the critical things that they need to have their career develop and have a rewarding and successful career, and have a rewarding, successful mentor-mentee relationship. All right. Excellent. So I think we have one more case, and this case is my my mentee's case. This is from a couple of years ago. So a junior faculty member who had just started on in our faculty asked me to mentor them. I hadn't worked too much with this faculty member, but what I did know of them is that we shared a lot in common. We had similar academic interests and we had a similar educational background. And so I was agreeable to serving as the official. Our department has an official mentor-mentee relationship program. And so I agreed to kind of serve as their official departmental mentor for this mentee. Things seem to be going okay. We had multiple meetings, probably once a month, and the conversations were productive. And it seemed as though my mentee was accomplishing the academic goals that he had set for himself. However, about 2 years later, I was approached by multiple colleagues on different occasions, bringing to my attention inappropriate behavior and comments that was made by my mentee. This had never been witnessed by me, and I had never really had a hint of this in our interactions previously, nor had I heard anything formally or informally from our department until this particular point. The situation seemed to escalate some, and as a result, the mentee actually ended up being removed from some committees, had less responsibilities in the department, and eventually was placed on academic leave as a result of these kind of continued professionalism problems. So this was a very meaningful relationship for me because I really I felt guilty to some degree that my mentee was having so many challenges and that I had not noticed or had not had any idea that this was developing. So I think there were a few things I kind of reflected on, of course. What could I have done differently? Well, I think that, one of the things we'll talk about, and one of the things we've talked about already a little bit, are the traditional topics that a mentor-mentee relationship focuses on. So things like career development, things like strategic courses to take, strategic grants to apply for, things like that. But I think there's also a very large body of non-traditional subject matter that a mentor can really help with as well. And some of that really has to do with, relationships or communication, or as in the case with my mentee, I really think that the root cause was, emotional intelligence, emotional IQ, just being aware of what your behavior and your comments, what the implications of those are with your colleagues and those who work with you. And so I think that, focusing a little bit on that non-traditional mentorship subject matter is very important, and also something that is not as commonly done. It's hard to broach sometimes awkward conversations. And I think we tend to gravitate more towards the firm kind of the very concrete subject matter, such as what's going to happen next in your career or what courses to take, because that is easy. Asking more questions like, how are things going? How are your relationship with your peers and in your department? Are you having any challenges? Those kinds of things are a little more difficult, but can be really an important part of the mentorship relationship. All right. As if you're running a program, I think it's also very important to kind of make sure that mentors are looped in, make sure that mentors are looped into these conversations, because as in my situation, I was a formal, officially designated mentor for this trainee, and I was not told until very late that this process had been going on. And I feel like maybe I could have intervened earlier and prevented it from getting as bad as it did. So if you are kind of a part of a mentorship program, or if you are a mentor, try to make sure that you have your ear to the ground and that you are aware of these sorts of challenges if your mentee may be encountering them. All right, because I think that's very important as well. All right, so we've discussed these 4 cases. There were a lot of great cases that were sent to me by my colleagues, but given the limitations of time, these were the only kind of 4 that we could talk about. But there's a lot, I think, here to discuss. But there were, a few conclusions that I think some of these cases really kind of strung together for us. And the first one is really having those early conversations, delineate things like a schedule of meetings, discuss deliverables, discuss what success looks like, discuss really the goals of the relationship. What is success going to look like at the end of this mentor-mentee relationship? And how should the trajectory of this relationship progress? All right. Communication, of course, is critical. All right. It's going to be very important to to communicate directly with your mentee or your mentor, and make sure that there are open lines of communication and that there's honesty and that you can ask questions that are important, and also to kind of be aware of your limitations, both as a mentor and a mentee, that you may not have all of the information that your mentee may require, and that it's okay to pull in outside outside assistance as a co-mentor or team mentor or even a consultant to the relationship. All right. Knowing your limits, I think, is critical. We can get into, particularly as mentors, we can get into the habit of providing advice and providing feedback, which of course is helpful in what the relationship is supposed to do, but also knowing your limitations, knowing when to ask for help, and knowing when you just don't have the context or perhaps the background that is required to comment with any sort of confidence on a particular situation. All right. Being aware of the common pitfalls that some of these cases have illustrated, I think, is critical. Mentor-mentee relationships that kind of go off the rails for one reason or another, such as delineated in the case where we had the mentor and the mentee in the win-win situation, where the mentee's participation in the research protocol really didn't assist them in any way. So be aware of some of these common mentor-mentee pitfalls and trajectories so that you can avoid them. And then don't forget, like I said, kind of approach the mentor-mentee relationship holistically. Remember those important traditional mentorship topics, such as career development, such as providing opportunities to your mentee, and as well consider some of those non-traditional subjects. So, like, how are things going? How is your mentee's overall health, and how are they doing generally in terms of their career development and their satisfaction with the career and their relationship with their colleagues and their professional groups and their department. All right. And that is it. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Purba, who's going to talk a little bit about the resources that are available through CUGH and through others for mentor-mentee development and relationships.
Thank you so much, Joe, for those excellent case studies. Actually, they beautifully summed up the content that Anna and Elizabeth shared previously. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My name is Purba Chatterjee, and I'm really honored to be here and to be part of this committee. So now I would like to wrap up this session by sharing some resources on mentoring. Elizabeth, next slide. Yes, thank you. So this is a University of California website that is available to all. And these resources are from a mentoring training that was organized by UCSF a few years ago. But even though the training happened a few years ago, all of the materials are actually quite relevant. You'll see that on the right-hand side of this page, there are the program course materials on multiple of these topics were just discussed right now. And each of these topic areas have a lot of content listed under them. And I encourage everyone to kind of click through all of the different topics to see what's listed. Each topic has a description of the content area, articles on the topic, and also some of them have slides and case scenarios and other really helpful information. I'm just, because we don't really have time, I'm not going to go through all of them, but I'd like to highlight a couple. One is on the NIH grants one, which is the fourth, I think. Yes, that's the one. If you can click on that, please. The grants and the institutional review board. I think you'll have to click on, yes. Sorry, yeah, the grants and the, yeah. So this one has really great content. If there's a whole section on grant writing strategies, the review process, and then also there are slides on this topic on how to write a competitive K application. So I encourage you to really take a look at this page really carefully and go through each of these content areas. I mean, some of the things that Joe talked about, communication, professionalism, emotional IQ, are all under the communicating effectively with mentees under that section. There's leadership skills and opportunities and how to build a research team. And as you'll see, each section has some content, some additional resources, and presentations. Now, finally, I'd like to kind of go through the case scenarios just to highlight all of the different cases. In addition to what Joe discussed here, there are multiple cases on a number of different topics that are really, really useful and gives you, different perspectives on mentoring, relationships, challenges, understanding diversity, and other sort of real economic and fiscal realities of a successful academic career, how to negotiate salary, etc. So there's a wealth of cases here that you could review, and I highly encourage you to go through these in detail, as they might provide valuable insights on all aspects of mentoring. Finally, if you go back to the main page, there are quite a few articles under the bottom of the page on the topic of mentoring that might be also very useful. Yes, right there. So I really encourage everyone to take some time and go through this website, and I hope that you'll find these resources really useful, and you can use some of the content for to design training programs for yourselves as well and for your institutions. And with that, I'd just like to remind everyone that this academic partnership program initiative under the CUGH is launching a year-long mentoring program. This program aims to match CUGH members interested in being mentored or mentoring an individual. So please do look up this program. The QR code is here, and we encourage anyone looking for career guidance and mentorship, as well as those who are able to provide mentorship, to apply. And this is a year-long program. It'll start in June of 2025, and mentoring pairs are encouraged. The part of the program will include monthly meetings with video calls and additional sort of contact with mentors and mentees via email and messages as needed. And I hope that several of you from this webinar will sign up for this program. Finally, as soon as you sign off from the meeting, from this webinar, you'll receive a link to complete an evaluation survey. For this session, I request you to please take a few moments to complete it, because it really helps us to put together such sessions and sort of improve the content based on your feedback. So please do take a few moments to complete that survey after you sign off. And with that, I will turn it over to Amy for final words and Q&A. Thank you.
So thank you so much. There's been several questions about, will this be recorded? It is being recorded. It will show up on the CUGH website, and there's a website that, and Sarah, you or Adil, you can help me with this. It's for webinars. It's where all of the webinars. It's a YouTube place for CUGH, and it will be recorded and it will be posted there. What questions do you have? Does anybody have any questions? We do have several things here, but if you have questions, I would, I appreciate the comment. There's been a lot of comments about great information, and I'm excited for people on this who are joining us to sign up for this. So just a couple of questions. Please do write questions in the Q&A. But for our panel here, is there a difference between mentoring and coaching? Anna, would you like to answer that?
Yes. Coaching often has a performance or an outcome-driven focus, and mentorship is a more holistic. And we all talked about mentoring relationship as something related to values, identity, long-term vision, and I think it's something more holistic and more sometimes, and Joe talked about that, we have non-traditional ways of mentoring, and sometimes is even something related to psychosocial support. And so I think it's more holistic, it's more complete.
And if I may just add to that, coaching usually tends to be for a limited period of time, whereas I think mentoring, can be for many years, even beyond, like after you establish yourself, even beyond that.
Thank you. There's a question, how best can mentee and mentor be matched organically? Does somebody want to jump in on that one? Elizabeth?
What I tell my students, if you're looking for someone kind of organic, look for people who are in your sphere, who are doing work that you're interested in, and ask them if you can meet up. In the US, we say meet up for coffee, maybe somewhere else it's different. But to meet up and to talk with them and just how that conversation goes, if you can connect again with them. And really on the mentee, it's about being persistent in some way and keeping in mind, okay, maybe every quarter I'm going to reach out to this person and see if we can meet up again. And I share some of the work I'm doing and the goals that I have.
Thank you. Joe, practical insights into, oh, I'm sorry, I missed one here. Supervision versus mentoring versus mentorship.
Yeah, no, thank you. I actually wanted to provide one more comment too, to piggyback on what Elizabeth was saying. I think using those initial relationships as well. So let's say you identify a faculty member or somebody you want to be a mentor, you establish contact with them, you sit down for coffee or something similar, and you realize that maybe it's not perfect, or maybe there's components of that fit that aren't ideal. I would say try to use that person then to identify an appropriate mentor, because oftentimes I think we're not really aware, particularly as a mentee, of the full landscape of mentors out there. And perhaps one of your potential mentors might say, hey, I don't have that exact same career path or that same career interest, but one of my colleagues is great. They really don't have a mentor right now, a mentee rather, and they are in that particular line of work, and they may be a really good connection. That's actually helped me quite a lot in the past. So the supervision versus mentorship is a great question, because as you guys probably remember, one of our key pillars here is fostering the independence of our mentee, right? So you want to provide that framework as a mentor for the success of your mentee, provide them a path, provide them with a roadmap to success, but at the same time foster their independence. And there's a lot written about how mentors can try, I think, as Elizabeth was saying, to try to kind of create a mini me, try to create a mentee that it basically is a reflection of their own career or their own interests. And so I think it's really on the mentor at that point, and the mentee, but really the mentor, to kind of make sure that while they are providing that guidance, they are not supervising, or they are not providing a restrictive environment in which their mentee has a limited path or a limited direction to take. And so I think the mentee also has a responsibility there to kind of make sure that they don't get trapped in that situation. But fostering the independence of the mentee, I think, is a critical goal of these relationships, and really kind of has to be emphasized and guarded throughout the relationship.
Thank you. Purba, I like this for you, and anybody can jump in, but practical insights into monitoring mentorship programs. So they're in indicators.
Um, monitoring mentorship programs.
Mm.
Well, I think again, some of the key indicators are how many mentees, right, and how productive they are in terms of their publications and grant applications, or even growing their own research program, and their own and have sort of working with mentees for themselves as well. So I think those are some of the key indicators that one would begin with, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Um, and how do you manage a mentorship relationship that has got cold due to miscommunication or misunderstanding? Anna, do you want to? I'm just kind of going through but anybody can answer. I think this was one of Joe's probably one of your case studies as well. But Anna, do you want to address this?
I think we have to, I think, don't assume things. Ask and adapt can be something. Don't be afraid to ask, to talk. And sometimes I think I heard something from a conference from Stanford, and she said that rather than I just want to talk to you, I just really love to hear your story. Sometimes you can approach people with kind words and don't give up. For me, from the Global South, to be here with really I'm not new, but I'm running a new program at my university, and to be here with my peers, it's I'm anxious, I'm nervous, but they are kind and they try to help me, and they gave me a voice to be working with them, so it was easy for me. It's not easy, but with them it's easy. So in a difficult relationship, please don't be afraid and try to break the ice, and probably will be great, and you will do your job. You at least you try.
Elizabeth, do you have anything to add? And I'm going to ask you the next question while you're thinking about it. But thoughts on conducting I'm sorry, yeah, thoughts on conducting mentoring virtually, particularly when mentors and mentees are geographically distant. And that's what we do a lot in our program is we are matching mentors and mentees, and it is virtual. It is almost always virtual. But do you want to address that question, Elizabeth?
Yeah, thank you. And Anna, great answer for, just trying to push through and taking time. And I think this leads into this one is the communication piece, really trying to listen to the other person, whether you're the mentor or mentee, and asking questions like, tell me your story, tell me your side of this, tell me your perspective. But when doing virtual mentoring, that can be tough because it's, as we know, a lot harder sometimes to establish relationships and trust and that type of thing when you're just talking through a camera and you're not able to meet in real person, meet personally. I think it makes it all the more important to invest that time in trying to learn about the person. I think the more frequent your communication will be, even if it's difficult or awkward in the beginning, that can really help. So maybe having more frequent meetings in the beginning to really get to know each other and make sure that there aren't several months between communication. I love using WhatsApp to stay in contact, so it doesn't always have to be formal email, which can often get lost. But in little check-ins too, just seeing, hey, how's your week going? Or wishing them a happy holiday, whatever it might be. And then remembering that when you're geographically distant, there's likely cultural differences. And so being aware of that, whether it's how different people observe time or observe formalities or staying in contact. So just being really open.
Thank you. A question, and thank you for the comment. Great presentation. Thank you for sharing your experience. As one of the panelists indicated, context matter. I wonder if CUGH has identified resources similar to the one showed by UCSF, but by other organizations, for example, in Global South. And Anna, you're from the Global South, and Purba, you really presented on the resources. So do y'all want to address this? Either one of you or both of you?
Well, I'd like to quickly say that the resources on the UCSF side are also kind of applicable. A lot of them are to the Global South as well, because they're sort of, but yeah, but it's true that context matters and some of them may not be applicable, but I think a lot of them are applicable as well. But I don't know, maybe the University of Rwanda or Anna, if you can comment, if they have, if you know of institutions that have such resources.
And before you respond, if someone online has resources, please put it into our chat as well to share. That would be great. But go ahead, Anna.
I really don't know, but I'm really will research. We don't have much global health official mentoring programs in Brazil. Probably we have something. I will try to find something for you.
And Joe, I don't know, do you know if University of Rwanda has, because they do a lot of training, right, around global health
Yeah,
equity?
there is so in the University of Global Health Equity, there is a mentorship group actually, and this group does a lot of the same things we're doing right now. Some training to mentors, matching mentors to mentees. But in terms of like an actual curriculum or a coursework or kind of a toolbox for mentors, particularly from the global south, I'm unaware. I think that's probably in development. That's essentially what we're trying to do. I think with the UGHE mentor group, but it is, more of a formal in-house program to kind of foster good mentorship in our program, not so much to produce a mentorship curriculum that is useful kind of outside those walls. But I think it is very critical, because I think mentoring and the kind of relationship of mentor mentee is variable, depending on these contexts and geographical locations.
And can an individual be a mentor and a mentee at the same time? And we've actually discussed this because I know for me, I can mentor in so many things, but I would need to be menteed in some things. For instance, a researcher at a PhD level could be mentored for a postdoctoral study, and at the same time, he can mentor master students. If so, how about the time management? Well, that's a great time management. Who would like to jump in and talk about that?
I can comment if that's okay. It's just so funny, last night at dinner, my son was asking me to take him today, this morning, to take him to school, and I said, I really can't. I have this presentation, and he's like, well, you can't get any time off, and I said, hey, we all have bosses, meaning we all have responsibilities. And that is to say more that, we're all trying to do something, right? So it's every point in our career, we're trying to do something, we're trying to accomplish some goal. And so, yes, absolutely. And in fact, I think that's the rule rather than the exception. We all really, in some ways, can mentor folks. We all can provide a degree of assistance and perhaps advice to those who are, requiring our advice or or doing something that we have already done or already experienced. Similarly, we're all trying to accomplish something, even folks who are, later in their career, we're all trying to accomplish some either professional or personal goal. And so I think it is absolutely natural and normal that we all are both mentors and mentees and potentially could benefit on both sides of that relationship simultaneously. So I think that's a great question. It's something that's kind of occurred to me, and even currently right now, I mentor multiple trainees right now in kind of formal and informal relationships. And also, I myself have two mentors, actually. One who has helped me kind of specifically, almost like a coach, I guess we were describing, helped me specifically with some career development aspects. And then a mentor who's more of a ongoing coach for some of these non-traditional things we were discussing, as well as some traditional career development. So great question. And I think a really great point, because we all, I think, are in that situation.
I will say that for this program, we will be matching some of our members to the group. So that we can make sure that the relationship is going well, and if there are issues, that we're kind of on top of it. And there was a question about, can anyone apply? You can, and if but we do want you to, if you're going to be a mentor, have that expertise in that area. And we are looking at particular areas, like if you're interested in research or leadership or whatever you're really wanting to be mentored in, we will match you with someone who has that expertise. And so that kind of goes, so anyone can apply for mentor or mentorship. Um, how can cultural differences between mentors and mentees be? Well, I think we've already answered that, right? Okay, they're going away. Often there are existing generational and hierarchical dynamics between mentors and mentees. What practical advice tips can the panelists share on breaking the ice and fostering a rewarding relationship? Who would like to jump in on that? Generational and hierarchical dynamics between mentors and mentees. And that's very I think that's a really difficult situation. And it goes back to those characteristics of the mentor and the mentee, right?
Amy, I would say,
Go ahead, Joe.
yeah, apologies. I would say that it's a great question and a big challenge because, like I was describing in one of my cases, there is often a strong power differential that can be a source of strength in the relationship. Obviously, a mentor who's been successful can provide great guidance. How they got to their situation, but as well, it can also be a hindrance. If the mentee feels any degree of reluctance or hesitation, or that the hierarchy or the relationship is kind of challenges open communication. The only thing I can say is that it's not that I'm in this situation, but from the standpoint of the mentor, really, I think opening the direct communication early on is very helpful. So calling it out, bringing it. So say, hey, please, I understand that there's a situation. You're a student. I'm a faculty member, but please ask me any question. I also recognize that, we're in different parts of our career and there's a difference in hierarchy here, but I'd like to discuss that as well openly. So kind of making that subject open and accessible and able to be discussed, I think really helps the relationship, as well. The other thing I would suggest is that team mentorship approach where perhaps you have like in the first case I presented where my colleague was getting great kind of career development from a very accomplished mentor, but the advice regarding kind of the context in the department or in kind of the cultural context of her of her relationships with her peers was a little more challenging. Bringing on a team member who actually can kind of fill that role, bringing on another mentor who potentially has a little bit of a better relationship and can provide advice that is kind of better contextualized for that generational hierarchical dynamic. I think that might help too.
And to add to that, I think what Elizabeth also mentioned in her presentation about peer mentors, just kind of to also seek out your peers on, sort of guidance on how to navigate such a situation might be helpful.
And we have gone over time, but they have allowed us extra time for this webinar. So we'll answer these last questions. So if you have a question, throw it up there. I don't know that we answered this one. How can cultural differences between mentors and mentees be effectively managed in virtual mentorship settings? We touched on that with a answer just a few minutes ago. Does anybody else want to add to that? We talked about the virtual, which is definitely different. But I do think the cultural differences, it can be difficult. So does anybody want to touch on that? I know we've talked about it a little bit.
Yes, I think I'd like to say something. I think in communication, because we were talking about communication and to be open, but the communication styles are absolutely different. And I read something about being concise in the emails, and my peers here, that my colleagues here know that they answer with one or two lines because we all are overwhelmed with things to do and we have a lot of emails to respond, and my emails for them are like 10 or 20 lines. So there are differences in communication and cultural expectations, and the distance is a problem. And Mariana asked something in one of the questions that Purba answer, and I answer another thing that is it's hard to be to think different, but I think we add um, um, something that is called by a conferencist from Stanford that I heard sometime, that it's diversity supplement, and I think it's very good for all of us to have this diversity in communication, in cultural expectations, and so assumptions can all differ, but we can um, learn from each other and try to learn. It's always a good thing.
I just want to add another situation that I personally have encountered in terms of cultural differences and how to be mindful of it is I do a lot of work in Kenya. And sometimes, the American culture is to just get straight to the point. You're just thinking about, again, that efficiency, right? Okay, straight to the point, communicate what needs to get done and move on. But then my Kenyan colleagues have often reminded me have for the way they interact with people is that they will always greet you first, right, before talking about what they need to talk about. There is this, they spend that time to greet people, so I have often been reminded, hang on, how are you doing today? And then talk about, what you need to talk about. So now I'm very conscious of that, whether it is in-person communication or email communication. I always try to start with a greeting first, and then try to get my point across. But yeah, so these cultural differences are really, critical, and one needs to be really mindful and have open discussions around them.
Such great points that you made, Purva and Anna, and that was something I tried to subtly point out in when I was talking my presentation about taking that time to get to know people. In the US, we don't do that very much. We jump right into business. And so if you're from outside the US, please don't take offense to that. If you're in the US, definitely take some more time to pause and get to know someone. As Anna mentioned, there are assumptions that we might have, and it's important to be inquisitive. So I have learned so much. One, working across cultures, this is a lifelong learning experience because everyone also has their own flavor of the culture that they're in. So you can't really learn everything about one culture, as we all know. But I've learned a lot through just stopping to ask questions when I don't know something, or just being a little bit more inquisitive because people love often to talk about themselves and to explain something. And what that does is it stops me from assuming that something's happening or making my own guess about why it's happening. It allows the other person to really feel like they're contributing to the relationship and being able to explain something. And I learned so much. So, but certainly that was a challenging question, just like the hierarchy one. So thank you.
We do have two more questions, and so we'll address these. Insights to mentoring internationally educated health professionals, I'm sorry, and then relate above to reciprocal mentoring that the panel touched on. And I think that's an important thing that we really, I think just even getting to know each other, reciprocal mentoring panel, reciprocal mentoring. I think that that's a very important thing. Does someone want to start with mentoring internationally educated health professionals?
I mean, I can comment on that. I think the specifics of that relationship, I think, really require uh, very tailored selection of the mentor mentee. So if you're a mentee, you really have to seek out someone who has that context and understanding. So, for instance, if you are a health provider from East Africa and you seek out a very a very successful, very accomplished mentor from a global north or European or North American institution. They may be able to provide you good advice regarding career development, but they're really not going to understand the clinical context that you operate in. They're not going to really understand the limitations and availability of kind of resources that you have compared to their setting, nor the kind of pathology that is seen on a daily basis, in terms of your work and theirs. And so I think it's going to be really important to really seek out mentors for specific tasks. And this might be where a team mentor or co-mentorship model works best, where, someone who's going to give you advice on kind of career development, seeking out that individual for very specific, roadmap to success within your particular academic discipline, and then seeking somebody else out who really can give you the specific advice that might be a little more geographically or culturally contextualized, particularly within healthcare. I think also, within healthcare, there's a lot of facets to the relationship. There's kind of your academic performance, and whether it's research or education. There's as well your clinical duties and how that part of the relationship works. And then I think there's a lot of those non-traditional things as well, that are very important in clinical training and clinical professions, because we interact not only with so many patients, but our colleagues on the nursing side, as well as our colleagues across hospital, as well as administration. So a lot of those relationships are critically important to success, and that's, I think, going to be an important part of any kind of international health professions mentorship relationship. So I hope that was helpful, but I think it's a challenge, and so I think it's going to be hard for any one individual mentor to be able to provide very perfect contextualized mentorship across each of those different domains. So it might be helpful to seek out, a team of mentors who can help with each component of each facet of that professional relationship.
Does anybody else want to add or talk about reciprocal mentoring? I will say that our panel we have people on this committee from all across the world, and we have had almost 20. I was looking at where everyone's from. We've had almost 20 countries represented at this webinar today. So this is incredible. And we will be hosting more webinars. There was a comment made about having different groups as representing. And so we will have people from all over the world doing some of these webinars. So I think that's a great comment. And one of the things about mentoring, and I know we've had this discussion, is having more people from across the world be a part of these committees. I've served on a couple of different committees for CUGH. These calls start coming out in like November, December, January to join these committees. This is where I have been mentored a lot, a great deal. I've learned so much about global health from serving on these committees. And I think it's a great place to actually be mentored and then turn around and help mentor others. So I think that this is the CGH panels the committees are a great place for mentoring. So I think the reciprocal mentoring is so important. When you're mentoring someone, do we not learn ourselves? So I think that that's a really important part of the mentoring process as well. Does anyone else want to add anything else? And with this, with this question, we will close. We're about half an hour past our time, but it's been such great discussion, and thank you everyone who's joined us and had comments. Thank you all so much. But does anybody else want to add anything?
Yeah, I've been part of reciprocal mentoring, and it's really interesting. That was the one where I shared I joined. I was expecting to be mentored, and when we were paired up, she said, "Oh no, you have expertise that I'd love to learn from," which caught me off guard. And so I had to really change my mindset a little bit and know, okay, like I'm not going to be solely mentored now. I am mentoring, but it became more of a partnership where we were sharing resources. And so she's someone that I'll reach out to if I need help on something and vice versa. So it's nice. And we thank you all so much. I've loved seeing, as Amy said, all the activity in the chat. There's people from all over. Thank you for some of your suggestions about making this more interactive next time we do it, having a broader panel and that type of thing. So I'll certainly take some of that to heart. But as Amy said, be on the lookout for calls to participate in committees, whether it's at CUGH or any other organization. That's a great time to connect with people, to be mentored, and to mentor others.
If there's no other questions or no other comments, thanks everyone for joining us. Y'all
Thank
have
you.
a fantastic day or evening or night.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.